Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and this is the events that changed the world, part 2. Enjoy the show. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show, the events that changed our world, part 2. And having gone through part 1, covering the background, the organisation, who is who, which groups were created directly out of these events, we continue in part 2 with some of the interactions between the Majestic 12 investigators and the EBE, which means Extraterrestrial Biological Entity, who was under their custodianship for the best part of 12 months from 1948 through 1949. By August 1949, the EBE was returned to his own people in an arranged meeting and left this earth with some questions answered, but a whole lot more unanswered. This exchange that follows tells us a lot about us, that has very revealing answers in relation to the people and this planet. It is sad and damaging in equal measure that this exchange was not released in full to the public before this document was released in very small circles back in the 2016-2017 timeframe. And even to this day, 72 years after the events, the public by and large remains ignorant that A, we're not alone, and B, aliens of many varieties exist, and C, they have visited us here regularly over tens of thousands of years, and in some cases longer. The cover-up of it all and the reasons why will be revealed in this show in greater depth near the end of this fully transcribed official document in my summary, and it goes way deeper than most people think. It is the public's chance to take a peek into much of this world, the majority of which is hidden from us all. It will elate many, particularly in the UFO and alt media circles. It will raise concerns to some, and it will bother, scare and create fear for others. People always ask for proof. Well, this is it, and it's 100% bona fide. This is your disclosure in a nutshell, and it will be accompanied by my background and knowledge from myself and a music extravaganza to accompany and support the narrative. So it's time for you all to get your popcorn out and put yourselves in balance as the magical carpet ride of disclosure sails around the world in a real and meaningful manner. I cannot think of no better song to launch us into this, and it is a personal favourite of mine, and also a poignant reminder and memory of my then 3-year-old grandchild who said this to me one day: "When are me and you going back to the stars, Grandad?" Right, these are the condensed conversations with the Aztec, not the Roswell, New Mexico extraterrestrial biological entities from April 1948 through March 1949. And the following conversations were held over an 11-month interval between various investigators labelled as INT and the Aztec EBE, and they are reduced from many hours of recorded debriefing and are included here to give the reader a degree of insight into the character and personality of the subject. And it was said on the document, these statements are not intended to provide complete answers to questions. Yeah, because they covered it up as why. And all transcripts of the debriefing and the original tape recordings of the same are available through special request with the proper clearance from the CIA Office of Counterintelligence or the Majestic with the code Digger Command and reference Project Aquarius. These may be secured through the XCOMCon.net liaison office at the Pentagon's Joint Strategic Objectives Staff Division in the National Defense sections. The irony of it calling it Project Aquarius should not be lost on the listener, which was later rolled out into another diversion program created by Blavatsky, Steiner, Crowley and others called the New Age, a replacement religion all carefully crafted into spirituality, all of which I exposed in From Russia with Love Part 8a through 8c. Now the real term for that program, if the truth be told, is New World Age Religion. One world religion as formulated within the UN documents surrounding Agenda 21 or 30. So this next portion covers the interactions between Majestic 12 and the EBE that was covered in this ultra top secret report back in January of 1989. So Majestic says, "What shall we call you? What is your name in your native language?" The EBE responded, "Oh, know even that it isn't easy for me, but you will not get the phonetic pronunciations correct without practice. I am not able to write it down for you because we do not use an alphabetic language that I could translate into English easily." Majestic, "Why don't you try it out on us anyway?" EBE, "Of course. Sethius or Setimus or Sectimus will do. This is the first of 4 names I'm known by in our written language. In our language, this would be shown by a single graphic symbol that would explain my entire lineage." Majestic, "Why is your language so different from ours?" EBE, "Why is yours so different from the Egyptian of 30 centuries ago? Forgive me, but it's not that. But that is not a simple problem. The group I belong to gave up any identification with any one planet or its culture before your people learned to make fire. There was once thousands of languages, both oral and written, in many of our civilizations, and also in our many civilizations as well. It become important to use symbols to represent whole words and even concepts that all of us held in common. Soon your culture will do the same with public signboards at first. Travel and intercommunications of many peoples will always cause this to happen." Now, sadly, those symbols were adapted, and the cabal and their secret agencies and societies used it to full effect against us. But it's pleasing to see now that many are unravelling them, and it will also be part of their downfall. Majestic, "Why are you here?" EBE, specifically to bring you these children, and we like trees. Majestic, would you mind expanding on that? EBE, certainly. In what direction? You see, we would hate to see you blow up such a pretty little planet to ruin so many nice trees. You have to remember that at this was the time and with the backdrop of dropping and testing atomic weapons. It's the same time frame. And the EBE said, if only you knew how hard it is to make a tree from scratch. People are easy. They follow naturally, but not without trees, of course. Green things must be respected above all else except children, and are very much alike. Majestic, what are the intentions of your government by sending you here? Who sent you and why? If this isn't your first time, evidenced by your familiarity with English, why haven't there been any official contacts made? The EBE sighed and said in reverse order, what? And be strung up from one of those beautiful trees? Why? Because you sent us an invitation we could not resist, for our own curiosity as well as safety. We sent ourselves, or I volunteered, take your pick. We have no government. We outlawed it, or rather, we outgrew it. I suppose you cannot outlaw a thing without laws, and those require governments, do they not? Majestic, I don't understand. All too predictable, they don't understand. Non-critical or future thinking was a problem within those circles as far back as 1947, it seems. The EBE, I know that. Try laughing, he said. You will not understand, but you will feel better about your ignorance. Majestic, but that is not good enough. Make me understand. EBE, it will have to suffice. One cannot teach until a student wants to learn. How good do you want us to be? I will not harm you. We will not harm you or interfere any more than you want us to. We are only here to offer what you ask for in a manner we know you will accept. And you did ask us to come and visit. Majestic, when? Who sent for you? Who invited you? The EBE said almost 50 of your years ago, 1899, you sent us signals. You were looking for us, and you scared us with a signal you should not have been capable of sending. So we answered, but you didn't understand our answer then, just as you don't now. We do our best to please others, and when you didn't respond to our message to you, and you did not come for a visit, we felt that we really ought to stop by and see how you were doing. It has been a long time, and it was the neighbourly thing to do, of course. Besides, it was right on our way to another destination. Your world, I mean. Majestic, you've been here before? EBE, I know. We were surprised that you had forgotten us. Majestic, I don't see how we could forget you. Are you serious? The EBE says, very seldom. But yes, your culture, which now dominates this civilization, did forget us. Actually, your people seem to have undergone a period of history in which you were, in which you were so afraid of old truths that you erased them in favour of religious fantasy. And there you have it in a nutshell. And what this show has stated all along about religion, it was a tool and an experiment that worked against us. But the comment, the afraid of old truths, rang a bell also. Humanity chose to not remember at a reset in the past, and essentially took the City of Light pills mentioned in the series 100. The humanity of the past did not want to remember the past wars and traumas, and chose to forget or have them erased. And this has had a devastating effect on our development that continues to this day. Sadly, people on this planet live for the lie. They won't face or can't handle the truth by and large, even when it hits them in the face. Many people vehemently defend the lie. And that is childlike behaviour in overview. And we have to learn to become adults and accept reality. The EBE went on. Some of your people remembered us orally in their legends, such as those who speak the Kahu'll, Kahuall, Narragansett, and the Athapassan dialects. They lived where we last visited, he said, but the high point of their cultures is also long past. Now, most of those languages were spoken in Alaska, northwest Canada, and around the Four Corners area of Southwest America, in particular the Ute lands. But the line just stated above will ring a massive alarm bell for this planet, and something that I have warned about in several shows, and something those people who follow our show at times have great difficulty with this particular line. Actually, your people seem to have undergone a period of history in which you were so afraid of old truths that you erased them in favour of religious fantasy. And like I have said repeatedly, that program has caused humans so much damage over time and denied us important knowledge, including the knowledge of other species from other planets, in case the humans work out their gods in their books were ETs all along. Majestic. I've never heard of them three native tribes. EBE. It's not surprising. Your history shows that the conqueror seldom preserves any history of their victims. I speak of the natives in this landmass, those called Indians, mostly on your eastern and southern borders, and in the ribbon of land that connects yours to the southern continent. Navajos, Aztecs, Incas, the Olmecs, and the Toltec cultures. These were all greater than your own civilization at the time when you were burning witches and killing their cats, which brought a plague that killed millions of your ancestors. Of course, you drove them mad and destroyed them with venereal disease and smallpox. Those you didn't slaughter for their gold. Majestic. Oh. EBE. And your social pundits speculate and joke about why we don't land in front of your nation's Capitol building and shake hands. We are different, not insane. Nice answer. Majestic, but we have changed. Western civilization is now the leader in this world for freedom and humanity. Oh dear. Did he seriously believe that fantasy act? EBE, two things. First, we believe that, or we wouldn't be here now. Also, tell that to the millions of Hebrews your Western civilization has destroyed in the past decade, or the millions of Negro families whose sons died to stop the madman Hitler, but who does not have plumbing in their homes as we speak. 72 years later, most of them still don't. Yes, you make progress, and that is hopeful for you, but emotionally, you are very different from us. Not primitive. That label would be pure egotism on our parts, but you are very different and frightening to us. We are trying to learn to overcome those differences before your runaway technology thrusts you upon us without choice. Majestic, we have no space travel capability. How could we harm you? EBE, in our terms, you are very close to that point. And he asked, do you have small children? The answer was yes. Well, they will grow up in a world where space travel is taken for granted. And before they make you a grandfather, Earthmen will be in space. Majestic. All right, so you've been visiting us for some time. I have no choice but to accept that, even though I'd love some proof. The proof. Proof is only garnered by those who wish to see it. Many don't, and that is a fact. Where they believe man only started 6,000 years ago because the church told you so, and then believe hunter-gatherers built the pyramids within 500 years of life starting. And they call us conspiracy theorists. Majestic went on, but you still didn't tell me who sent you the message from Earth that brought you here. EBE, funny you should connect those two subjects. If you dig in a place, I will show you on any world map and you will find your proof. Unfortunately, I am now in the wrong country for this, but others of my people will instruct the proper government to dig there if you don't mind. You see, in a remote part of the nation you call Yugoslavia, we visited and helped the people there to build a very advanced culture over 7,000 years ago. It will be found. And what was the military and Majestic response? They sent in the US military and NATO and bombed all the evidence to smithereens, like they did in Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria, all to protect the church narrative. The EBE went on, but there is a beautiful mystery in the fact that the person who sent us your first message 49 years ago in 1899 did come from this nation originally. His transmission was sent from near here, however, in the state you call Colorado. Majestic, can you tell us his name? These people are not very bright, are they? Are there any proofs of your earlier visits? EBE, thousands of proofs if you look around. The scientist I spoke of was an electrical researcher named Nikola Tesla. You are old enough to have heard of him when he was still alive. You know, I just thought of a very good puzzle for some of you to solve. On an island you named the Isle of Pines in your Pacific Ocean, you will find what is left of a concrete landing platform we built there 115 centuries ago. 11,500 years ago. The Isle of Pines, Pines. You cannot miss finding that, since the footings we put down still cover many acres. Look for those if you would like to. No culture on your planet could have built them at that time. It would be fun for me if you ever locate them, because my great-grandfather helped to pour the mortar for them. And there is the evidence that many of our oldest structures were in part built by extraterrestrials, not humans per se, although there was at some point shared working together. But the biggest lie in that field is in Egypt. Majestic. What? How long do your people live? EBE. Somewhat too long, I think, at times. We have built up our age somewhat. It would vary, but I was alive when your whole continent was practically a question mark on the sea charts. Majestic. What about these babies we found with you? Are they human? What are we supposed to do with them? The EBE, rather indignantly, says, raise them, of course, as I would have done. Certainly they are human, perhaps more so depending on whose definition we use. You are too far away from understanding the whole science of bioengineering yet for this to be sensible, but just accept we have sown the seeds of a rich harvest for your culture, and this will continue. They are only children, but raise them well, please, because the care of children is one of the few things we do not laugh about. Now, that last statement has so many connotations it will boggle the mind. The very fact they are bringing babies here to be brought up should send DNA and biologists running for cover. It is the missing link of man, which has never been found. Because, as this show has stated, many here in the past, and perhaps now, did not come from here. There is evidence that on a certain levels are corroborated that the yellow, red and black races arrived here 40,000 years ago. Some suggest a seeding program. Others that I am aware of were refugees from various wars of the past, some of which were from Tiamat. Evidence in the Rus Vedic text, not the Indian texts, they were stolen, suggests the white race were here 640,000 years ago. You know, how can science carry on lying to the people and making up the ridiculous conspiracy theory of humanity all started from two people, Adam and Eve? The real Eve was Lilith, who stole children and is linked to the moon. She was half human and half snake, and so a chimera, also known as the Kali Ma, the Dark Mother. But if we're to believe the official narrative, for a start, that would make us all a product of incest. And the key factor is we would have all had the same blood group, shared DNA, and all be the same skin colour. This is not the case, and it makes a mockery of the official stance of those so-called science groups. One only has to look with an open mind as to why the rhesus negative mother would reject her own child in the womb. And how did science work that out so quickly? And how did they know what to put into the injection to stop the mother from rejecting the birth? Statistical analysis was not like the endless figures we get now, or the accessible databases. Most records back then were kept on cards and had to be sorted through over many years to determine a pattern. And even then, the average injection or vaccine has to be found, with testing that takes over a decade before it's launched, unless it's COVID-19. And yet this injection was made available in the 1960s. Clearly an external input was made into this, and not from here also. Another aspect of this seeding babies here is the psychological damage done to that child. Who or where are that child's parents? Where did they come from? Where is home? And why do so many in our own group feel like they don't belong here or never came from here? And that is also represented in many other groups and peoples around the world. Why put them people through that level of trauma? To those that do remember, where is their help with this matter? Who do you speak to? The psychologist? Good luck with that, because that's a one-way trip to the nut house. Due to their sheer ignorance of these wider matters and the complicity of the governments and agency clowns to cover it all up. Those people who remember fragments or otherwise, to them this lifetime is a jail sentence, an equivalent to a transgendered person knowing that they're in the wrong body. And if you'll pardon the pun, but everything to these people appears alien to them. Do they not? People who refuse to believe what they see because the government told them it's all a lie. But the question remains is, who made the government or the church the bastions of truth and proof? Because neither of them are, and both are in it for their own agendas, the control and the abuse of the people, no matter which government or indeed which church. All are and have been lying to us and have done so since the day you were born or brought here. Majestic, if you say so, but such a trip has no purpose in our way of seeing things. That was to their world. EBE, of course not, and that is why we do what we do. Listen now, because this could go on forever if you don't. We are at home wherever we park our craft. It is huge by any standards you could apply. We are concerned because this area of space is one we cross regularly as a simple matter of course. A bit like your campers who vacation at the same place every year. But suddenly we find our camping site threatened by bears. But bears are protected. You are not supposed to hurt them. So you must tame them or give up the whole vacation. Do you see that although you are a long way from travel to other stars by our standards, you will be overrunning the whole area by the next time our children pass by here? Do you see why it is vital, unless you destroy yourselves first, for us to tame you now, before you come to us? Would you let savage headhunters roam the streets of a city without sending them to school first? And this is where I personally have an issue that still rankles today in relation to the Universal Council. They talk about us destroying ourselves. But it was their element of off-world beings who, by and large, gave humans the tech and capabilities to destroy this planet in the first place. It was their ilk who have destroyed this planet several times in the past, with their Star Wars battles. It was they that destroyed the 2 moons we had in the sky previously. They who introduced the Saturn Moon Matrix. And quite frankly, the ridiculous experiment known as CERN. It was they who have engaged the greed, egotistical and arrogant entities that operate this planet, called governments, military and agencies, and by and large ignored all dialogue with the average human, unless they were of use, generally for scientific purposes like extracting DNA, blood, organs and our babies. It was they who traded us for pieces of meat to fight their wars, and they who used us for food. So a little bit of balance was and is required here when discussing who is to blame. Blaming humans for everything is the remit of the Draco. Ain't that right, Shane? The EBE went on. We cannot interfere with you any more than you could interfere with bears in your parks. Someday we would rather you join us, visited our worlds where we do make camp, and joined us on our long voyage of discovery or not. It is your destiny as long as you do not try and alter ours. Try and grow into our perspective, and all the illogic you question will seem very reasonable. It is a matter of scale. Centuries instead of decades. Someday you will be like us, and you will see. Some new short-lived species will think you are a crazy metaphysical paradox too, and you will have to learn to treat them gently as children, without letting your egos get in the way. Majestic, but with your science you could make any world your own personal paradise. Why live in spaceships? EBE, yes, and with our weapons we could take what we want as well. But why have one world when you can see them all? You all covet land, a very old idea and only natural when the supply is limited. And then said this statement, which should resonate with everyone who listens to this show. You have heard it before. Just try to accept we are in paradise when we are seeing something new. Our God is change. Our religion is understanding. Searching for truth is our greatest social challenge and purpose. When you build up your age, this will become as clear to you as to why you must breathe air. When humanity grasps those last few lines, we will be on our way to real progression. That has been denied to us by fake gods and their progression blocking program called religion. Majestic, it sounds like yours is the ideal perfect world. EBE, no. When you have more years, filling them profitably is a real problem. And the trouble with being a loving species is that you want to prove it by making more of your kind with a partner of love. Of course, this must be closely regulated in a culture such as yours, and so relationships of an intimate nature are difficult to leave to one's heart. Majestic, you speak of the heart being the seat of emotions. This is a concept we use on Earth, but we know it to be a sort of romantic fiction. Why does an advanced race like yours maintain such a notion? The heart is a romantic fiction indeed. What a bunch of jackasses. And humanity wonders why we're not progressing. With jackasses like these taking charge and making decisions for us, we will never progress beyond children. And that has to stop. And this is why we need to build the People's Club for and by the people. So we have a voice and a say. Why? Because we are the voice. Right, on we go. Nobody said this disclosure was easy. It's not, but it needs to be delivered. That way we can process it, heal it, and then adapt and adopt to it. So the EBE's response of why you would need the concept of romance, the heart being the seat of romantic fiction, was, well, I used that particular expression for your benefit, but why do you object to romance? Your species is driven by little else except romantic vision. Why not yours as well? Certainly our way of life must seem romantic to you. It does to us. We write poems and express ourselves with works of art just as you do. Many of the greatest works of construction on your world were inspired by a joyful effort of our people and yours in the distant past. We leave these wherever we go, and you romantic creatures have tried for many generations to explain why such huge monuments to human engineering were ever built in the first place. Why? They were built to express the joy of living, of course. And the greatest sense of satisfaction our people have gotten from working side by side with yours in the past has been one of our biggest joys in life. That is another reason for our being here. Surely even a small child can understand such joy. Majestic, you keep talking about a message for us. Can you define that a little more? Yeah, like I said, they're not very bright, these people. The message is fairly clear. Stop being children and grow up. And yet 72 years later, we still see no evidence of that in their circles. The EBE says, we simply are. We have no deeper purpose than to be. We do not wish direct contact with your people. You would reject us in your present frame of mind. So we seek to be accepted at the lowest possible level, hence the broadest one possible. Never a truer word spoken in jest. We seek to be accepted at the lowest level possible. So what he is referring to is the government, the lowest level possible. And yet we the people honour and obey them like some demigods of the past. And yes, he is right. Many of our peoples would reject them due to the fear-based programs run on radio, television, and also movies. He went on, that is a cultural myth. We seek to be the next Santa Claus, to put it bluntly. This must come to your people, from your people. The understanding will be given you by the widened perceptive skills of these children we are bringing you. So what he is saying here is, and a confirmation, they started bringing in here children with extra strands of DNA and higher soul development to teach the world how to progress. And what did the jackasses do? Declared them all ADHD, which is a fictional disorder, and poisoned them with their pills and vaccines, or declared them insane, or targeted them with their MK Ultra experiments and in league with off-world entities. Fact. He went on, for your sake, this must not come from political or religious leaders. Exactly my point. We must build and provide an alternative to those harvesters of life force energy. Both of them. Like he said, they represent the lowest level possible. Government and the church. He said it must flow evenly throughout all common cultures of the earth. And that is where the People's Club can come in. A large body of people spread globally, operating in need, not greed, caring and sharing, cooperative that operates in peace. And only then can we all play a role in building this for the future. The EBE said the message is not that we are here, but that each of you can control where you are going. Be like us or different as you choose. But you choose, not your political leaders who believe that only a tiny percent of the elites can rule wisely over their masses, or those who spread fear of death in order to enrich their lives through religion. Oops. And that's another confirmation right there. Those who spread fear of death in order to enrich their lives through religion. Does that sound remotely like a program we should be following? The evidence against that organisation and program stacks up by the day. And yet people who live in fear and lies wish to continue to propagate it. It has brought us nothing but illusion, death and trauma. Because deep inside all of you lies all of your answers. It was never external of you to begin with. Just like the real God, Source. He went on, knowledge is only good when spread like seeds from which wisdom might grow, and faith has a purpose of when it's not created of fear. With the faith in the wisdom of truth and in each other, your world will come to ours soon enough. Our hope is to be able to receive you as friends and equals when you arrive. That is our message. You must do the work for yourselves, because if you do, you will keep all the rewards. That last message is again a confirmation of this show. Stop following the fear, whether connected to a religion or otherwise. We must do the work. And that can be a heads up to the shadow and inner work we talk about. But also applies to the ending of the Saviour program, which is mired in too many. The Saviour was always us. Nothing more and nothing less. And it's time to take responsibility, methinks. The next section is called Unidentified Flying Objects Documents Prepared for Entry Level Majestic 12. In any attempt to properly assess the situation as it relates to the issue of national security or the risk of cultural upheaval, it is important to take full advantage of hindsight and historical perspective. It is both an interesting footnote in history and a key point of reference that the human race itself is directly responsible for its being contacted in this century by beings some of the world's. Through dialogues with representatives of these alien pilots of the flying disc craft, we have learned that our own scientific curiosity led to the visitations which have been ongoing throughout this century. In 1899, the Yugoslavia electrical scientist Nikola Tesla, most noted for his introduction of alternating current to electric power transmissions and for a laboratory device named after him, the Tesla coil, embarked on 4 days of researches that have made this the saucer century. Tesla had long proposed that it was possible to directly broadcast pure electrical energies at a distance without a loss of power and without wires. By 1899, and with the aid of government and scientific backing, Tesla had chose a site near Colorado Springs in Colorado to conduct a massive and never repeated experiment. Nikola Tesla's purpose was to gather the Earth's own magnetic field and to use the Earth as a huge transmitter to send signals to outer space in an attempt to contact whoever might be living there. Now, Tesla had no idea that the specific type of power he had generated was coursing through space and caused great havoc many light years away. And in the report it says, modern science has all but forgotten Tesla's work. That would be a no. Modern science did not forget Tesla's work at all, but it was hidden away and repressed by the same controlling psychopaths that created this document in the first place. The Ford Foundation, who threatened Carnegie Hall of withdrawing their funding due to creating too many Teslas. And it was so successful in dumbing down scientists, the system of control rolled it out into all American schools with devastating effect. So much so, now, not only do America rely on imported goods heavily, but also highly imported skill sets as well, because we produce little to none of our own. And the ones that do break through end up in agency-based programs. The document goes on. The sorts of energies and magnetic waves he was working with were never fully defined or explained, and almost all of his original designs are lost or were destroyed by their creator in his later years. Yet more lies and misdirection. Those that know exactly where they are, and also who minds them. But it's now obvious that this single action by a scientific outlaw generating serious concerns among the intelligences in the near reaches of the galaxy. Although others have attempted to use radio waves to broadcast messages into outer space, none used the energies that Tesla did. We have now determined by discussion with the extraterrestrials who have contacted this government since 1947 that the type of power Tesla used is a very important form of energy. It has apparently been largely overlooked by modern electrical engineers and physicists, although certain information gathered by the CIA indicates a strong program of research of this type inside the Soviet Union. There we go again. Another example of the fear porn-based rhetoric coming out of Langley and the CIA. Ooh, the nasty Russians may have it. Neglecting to tell the public they've been working directly hand in hand with KGB 1 and 2 since the 1940s minimum. Fact. According to the alien sources we have debriefed, Tesla's work was a technical fluke, at least 100 years ahead of its time. So, if it was a technical fluke, which it wasn't, and it was 100 years ahead of its time, why hasn't that technology been developed publicly since? Of what is now 121 years further on. Development of these energy fields will only logically occur after we have fully understood laser beam devices. They knew this in the 1940s. The extraterrestrials have reportedly been visiting and regularly monitoring the progress of life on Earth for thousands of our years, and they were very concerned about this odd signal we sent coursing through space. Among other things, it seems that the energy waves can disturb the process of biology, alter weather patterns, and damage ozone levels in whatever planetary atmosphere they might encounter. So it damages ozone levels. That's rather interesting given the vast ozone holes, and we're all going to die again back in the 1980s and 1990s. Who caused that? Was it EBEs sending messages to us? If so, where are they? But let's not forget, most of the ozone holes on this planet was actually caused by NASA. And that's a fact also. Evidently, Tesla was sending huge amounts of an unknown form of energy into space along with his intended signals, but was unable to detect these due to the fact that instruments for their measurement did not and do not now exist. The extraterrestrial intelligence attempted to respond to his transmissions in a form of binary code that they routinely use for long-range communications. Now, evidently, these energies act instantly at a distance and are not limited to the speed of light. But they did send the message back, ask that he cease sending the messages. Of course, Tesla had no way of understanding the message he received back from space. Fortunately, the anger of the local residents at the side effects of his research forced him to shut down the Colorado Springs experiment in the same year he began them. That is a lie also. He was shut down by the controlling agents and abetted by the born-in and born-to people, bankers, and the OSS style groups. JP Morgan in particular. Mellon, another one. Baruch. They blocked him. Why? Because they wanted to run outdated bacteria poop technology called oil and coal. So the document goes on. This then was the actual start of the so-called flying saucer age in our times. Again, factually incorrect. There have been reports of these craft in every millennia going back tens of thousands of years. As it became clear that our people were on the verge of an explosion of technical progress, the extraterrestrial intelligence decided on a long-term program of carefully calculated and seemingly random contact with the eventual goal of raising our awareness of our place in the galactic community. With the advent of the atomic age, this program was escalated to include eventual diplomatic contact with many of Earth's government. Why was that? Because nuclear and hydrogen-based weapon frequencies manifests in their world as well, is why. So we detonate that type of weapon, it resonates and rings like a bell through their world. Not to mention how many differing species were below the main US testing centres as well. There's a reason they did those testing there. The same approach of staging apparent accidental contact was chosen for its low psychological impact on the human race. Yes, it may have had a low impact on the many, but a high impact on many other people's lives, and had a major psychological effect on those who controlled the information, details, and evidence of such. Many of those people went psychotic. This was the situation in the case of the United States of America in reference to the Roswell and Aztec, New Mexico incidents. The problem with direct contact was stated early in our relationships by one of the EBEs who said, quote, "Right now there are people on this planet who don't know that your moon circles your world, or how long it takes your world to orbit your star, the sun." He said, "I'm not speaking of a small number, but perhaps as many as half of the global population. We have been mistaken for being gods or devils in your past, and this sort of slow education is best." Slow education is one thing, and we kind of, with our show, have done drip-fed disclosure, as I think that is the best way to get people to process and heal with it. But these clowns did zero disclosure and associated anyone with knowledge or information on this subject as an enemy of state or deemed to have a mental health issue. That is not slow disclosure in anyone's book. He went on, "As a cultural myth, we stand the best chance of acceptance by the masses of your citizens. There are now hundreds of compiled studies of the EBEs, their worlds, and their objectives. In several cases, volunteers of the armed forces have participated in diplomatic and cultural exchanges during the 1970s and 1980s, and have visited some of the EBE worlds." So there you have it. We've been doing exchange programs. Now, some of those exchanges did not go very well for Earth humans at all, and neglects the fact that many who were sent to their worlds with no choice in the matter, and the fact that some of them, in fact many of them, never returned. We will glow, yes indeed. Now, The next section is a short assessment made by the Majestic group in 1989 of what took place and an overview of the situation as they understood it. And it says there are 4 basic types of EBEs so far confirmed, and they are listed here in descending order of their influence on our studies. Earth-like humanoids. There are several variations more or less like ourselves. The majority of these are friendly and are the bulk of our EBE contacts. Most have a high degree of psychic ability and also use science and engineering of an advanced nature. Small humanoids or greys. The greys, so called for their hue of skin, possessed by most of this type, are a sort of drone. They are not unlike the worker ants or bees. They are a type of genetic clone, incapable of sexual reproduction. With little or no independent will, they are mostly under the psychic control of the Earth-like humanoids, who raise them like pets or a kind of slave. A detailed explanation of this cultural oddity and its role in the form of space travel these EBEs employ is addressed elsewhere in this briefing. Assuming the greys are under benign control, they are harmless. Non-humanoid EBEs. These are in several classes and come from worlds where dominant morphology took a different evolutionary course. Many of these are dangerous, not for organized hostile intentions, but because such creatures do not hold human life as sacred. To them, we are animals, despite our intelligence. Oh my, the Torah and the Talmud springs to mind. A few are friendly because their cultures forbids all acts against living creatures. Thus far, contact with this group has been minimal, with only a handful of unfortunate encounters. And if you believe that, you'll believe anything. A handful of unfortunate encounters, that will be a no. Transmorphic entities. Of all the forms of EBE studied so far by Operation Majestic, these are the most difficult to understand or even to give a description of. Essentially, such entities are not beings or creatures. These entities exist in some other dimension or plane, which is to say, not in our space or time. They do not use devices to travel in space. Only once has a member of MGJ-12 contact team been privileged to be present when introduced by an Earth-like EBE to a transmorphic entity. Yes, they're too highly evolved to get involved with jackasses, is why. In essence, these entities are composed of pure mind energy. That's their description. I will say pure source energy is the real description. They are not unlike ghostly spirits and seem to only be curious about our universe. Our universe. That tells you there's more, which there is. They are said by other EBEs to be capable of taking on any physical form that channel their energy into as matter. The principal means of travel used by the humanoid EBE is of a mechanical nature and involves very large craft that cannot land on a planet. Take note. These employ the forms of energy discovered accidentally by Nikola Tesla. It wasn't accidental. To cause themselves to be thrust from or pulled towards the stars they wish to visit. Some alteration or control of the passage of time on board the in-transit craft is used as well. Cryogenic. Since the huge interstellar craft cannot approach the powerful gravity and magnetic fields of the stars from which they drew their power, they are placed into a parking orbit far outside the solar system of any star they approach. This may be millions of miles from the world the EBEs wish to visit. And there you have it. And that ends the many ridiculous claims on blogs and YouTube videos of so-called mothercrafts and biospheres. It's not possible. Similar craft, often not always disc-shaped, are used to travel the distance remaining. Most of them are the cigar or rods. These drew their power and propel themselves by use of electrogravity. This is a means of balancing a gravity wave against an electromagnetic wave in a manner that generates a third kind of wave, one-on-one with the one, similar to which powers their larger vessels. This journey between worlds takes time in the small craft, and the humanoid EBEs are not lessened during a state of suspended animation, so they are still able to control their craft. Towards that end, and to provide for some external control over unforeseeable circumstances while frozen, the humanoid EBEs developed a host parasite culture thousands of years ago with the small grey EBEs. Since then, these greys have become an extension of their controllers' senses to such a degree that most humanoid EBEs rely heavily on their use at all times. They are not unlike the symbiotic empathy between a pack of hunting dogs or a team of horses and their earthly masters, and by the term earthly doesn't mean this planet. Earth just means an inhabited planet. It's not the name of our planet. It's not called Earth. It's called Midgard. And they use these small greys like tools or partners in work, explained one EBE. During the current wave of interest in our planet by the EBEs, there have been 3 interstellar craft or motherships stationed outside our solar system. These have been rotated at 22-year intervals since the 1930s, the early 1930s, which means another rotation has recently happened, or there's one coming up very soon. During a contact debriefing in 1964, an EBE explained that this was no hardship for them. Our genetic science is about where yours will be in another millennia or two, although the basic grasp of engineering the DNA will come within another 80 years or so if you survive as a species. They clearly knew what was going to happen, or what was intended to happen, before 2012. Well, that failed as well. Our friends will still be living when we return home, and most of us bring our families with us so we can watch our children mature. Their family structure is very different from ours and often includes several models of each set of parents, specifically engineered to produce offspring of certain mental character adopted to different physical forms needed in their culture. All of these live together as a family unit, often as many as would be in a small village or neighbourhood in our civilization. Sounds like a TPC village to me. On board the mothership, almost every race and culture is represented. There is no recognisable form of government behind the actions of these representatives from many worlds. It has been explained that as any species evolves physically, it evolves psychically or spiritually. Something that, in my opinion, has been cruelly denied to us by some of these off-world entities, humans, and all religious denominations and their programs. The outcome of this process is that any form of political organising, including the politics of religious structure, becomes a personal moral transgression of higher shame to any who practice such pursuits than any good that could ever come from them. Although this attitude makes any discussion of their faiths or beliefs nearly impossible, it has become very clear that most races of interstellar travel support the principles of self-determination. In short, that there are no empires of conquerors threatening our planet. Oh dear, if only they knew what was supposed to transpire by 2012. A little cross-cultural nudge, like urging a small child to walk towards you, is okay. But these guys wouldn't let Darth Vader sweep their streets, as a member of a Majestic diplomatic task group put it after several years of analysis of contacts. Many volumes could be written and have been on the details of this ongoing contact process. Much of the contact of individual citizens by these EBEs seems absurd on the surface, and we remain largely incapable of controlling such contact. And there it is again, that fear-based narrative again, indicative of agency, military, and the so-called top-order people. Control. Why do they feel the need to control anything? Put simply, it is done so out of fear, as only the weak and fearful control others. The pattern developing, however, seems to indicate that a course of action is not directly needed. Little threat to national security has occurred. There is no such thing as national security in this country. None. It's a fake program like the Patriot Act. In fact, the EBEs have informed us that we are a sort of protectorate, not unlike a wildlife preserve in their eyes. Really. That statement is so wrong on many levels, because a protectorate suggests a nurturing element. But they've been far from nurturing in overview. I know for a fact they have hunted us, abused us, cheated us, presented themselves as gods, consumed us on an energy and physical level. And whilst that doesn't apply to all races and species, the fact that they tar us all with them the same brush, in overview of visitations here and the actions towards humans, we have to look upon it in the same way as they do to us. A wildlife preserve, as they put it, is something that animals roam free and are occasionally culled. Sounds familiar to me in overview, with an added twist of it being in a zoo, whereby many souls and spirits were trapped in here like a cage. So perhaps zoo is a better fit than wildlife reserve, as they used. The document went on, they will not protect us from ourselves, but are not interested in making us become like them either. There do appear to be forces in outer space that are hostile in the sense that they would exploit us, although not conquer us. And we have been informed that a large part of the alien presence on Earth is to insulate us from doing any damage to the aliens' own culture until we are more morally evolved as a species. With these things in mind, we arrive at a statement of official position. That was the Majestic position, of which there'll be another one coming up shortly. But quite how do they expect our species to be morally evolved by denying us the real knowledge? One has to ask that. How are we going to get the knowledge if they have self-appointed themselves and they are running the show? What is, or where is, their long-term plan for humanity? And the real answer is they don't have one, except their own greed and control-based agendas. So if you want to know why humanity has really stalled, these people in the CIA and the other subsidiaries are the answer to that question. And all of those groups should be arrested and their groups disbanded for mass treason against we the people. The costs have been staggering in terms of people's lives, energy, minds, and also finance. So the statement of position of the Majestic 12 is this: insofar as not threat either implied nor expressed, and either of a military, civil or societal nature, has been forwarded by the visitation of the Association of Visiting Extraterrestrials against the government and the people of the United States of America, and insofar as great and many cultural and technical advances has been derived by such exchanges, none of which was passed on to the general public. We hereby grant full, complete diplomatic status and recognition to these individuals from beyond our world. How interesting. And yet you can't grant a home and peace to fleeing refugees. It adds a whole new meaning to the term illegal alien, does it not? And one has to ask the question, just whose planet is this? They go on. Furthermore, let it be known that we seek to provide shelter, comfort and aid in all their peaceful endeavours, so far as these are respective of the laws of our land and the right to self-determination and free will expressed in our national constitution. Again, not something afforded to we the people. And until such time as the objectives or methods of either party in this agreement shall deem otherwise, this bond between our peoples shall remain in effect. The preceding diplomatic treaty was drafted by the Directorate of the Majestic 12 operation and a joint committee of extraterrestrial visitors, representatives of the US Diplomatic Corps, as a statement of intent. It was ratified and signed at Kirkland Air Force Base, Texas, on July the 18th, 1954, by President Dwight D. Eisenhower and an individual on behalf of the EBEs. Each subsequent holder of the executive office has continued to uphold the intent of this policy towards these aliens. Reality, each subsequent holder of the executive office, aka the President, was not informed after Eisenhower. Beyond the statement of intent, a basic agreement has been reached on the following negotiated issues. The extraterrestrials will refrain, where and when possible, from open display of their presence to the public at large. So the tax-paying public pay trillions of their dollars and other currencies for this program, and we are denied this groundbreaking knowledge, so the select few, most of whom are not in control of themselves, can control things. The public doesn't have the need to know. We were paying for it. The next negotiated issue, the extraterrestrials will submit substantiating proof and listings of all persons contacted from among the public at large, or that have been removed from the earth for purpose of contact or cultural exchanges. How nice of them to ask for a database so their on-ground men in black types can arrest, torture or kill them. This is what took place. And really, in my opinion, I would not call sending military agency types, research groups, cultural exchanges, as by and large they are not representatives of our real culture. Just follow the orders, people. In other words, like the grey drone. Next negotiated issue. In no case shall anyone be abducted by the EBEs, be subjected to knowing harm, or kept against their will for longer than 48 hours. How about none is abducted at all? Did these people not think of that before these agreements? And who made them God? Next negotiated issue. The extraterrestrials will avoid any willful contact with representatives of the public media or any private investigators of the UFO community groups or writers dedicated to the same intentions. There is that control and secrecy again to cover up not only the agenda, but actual crimes against humanity, done not only by the EBEs, but Majestic 12 and their subsequent agency-based groups. So clearly a lot of these UFO contact people on the internet were not contacted at all, were they? Because this treaty bans it. Controlled opposition, anyone? Next negotiated item was the US government will provide through the Defense Logistic Agency's Reutilization and Marketing Service such items as needed for the personal comfort of those visiting EBEs who may be sequestered in its care. Be nice if they afforded that to their own citizens who pay for this charade. Next negotiated item. The US government will provide a section of the Majestic headquarters base in Nevada as an embassy compound for the EBE visitors and equip to their needs, all whilst leaving Americans in their thousands homeless and on the streets. Any exchange of technical, scientific or social information will be conducted item for item and in such a manner as to assure that both parties have equal gain from the process. All binary again with terms both parties. Hello, there's a third party in all of this. It's called we the people. Except for many fascinating deals which are available under separate cover through either Operation Majestic or the Defense Intelligence Office of Counterintelligence, this concludes the assessment of the situation and statement of position section in this preliminary briefing paper. So what this tells you before we go into a music break and a summing up is this whole event was covered up at all costs. And essentially what followed as they declared war on the people Perhaps you can call it a civil war. I prefer a civilian war. But we don't want your civil or civilian war, Mr. President, Majestic groups and their army of agency treasonous goons either. Right, this is a final summary of my input from here on in. And this piece raises a number of questions of how this world operates under the shadows, radars, scope and understanding of many of the world's population. There has been some wonderful interactions in the past with off-world groups, but our more recent exposure has largely not been kind to mankind. Some of our recent interactions with the off-world below our feet have been far more profitable, and the engagement by and large has been beneficial to both groups. But that's down to the peace treaty. But what these events, the Roswell and the Aztec crashes, did is it created fake acts like the National Security Act, fake trade deals globally, most of which were for off-world trading. The Trans-Pacific and Transatlantic deals are just two examples of that. Swiss Indo, a major player in that off-world trading role, and largely at our expense. Fake agencies created for the sole purpose of secrecy. Shell companies created with the sole purpose of funneling money away from the people and into their black budget and clandestine programs, of which only they benefit from. Fake news to deflect any real news, all operated by the same above groups, raises deeply important questions to the people listening to this of where do we go from here? Do we continue to allow these power-mad psychopaths to harvest our energy, siphon vast funds off of the people to fund their shell companies and agencies, and allow them to continue to deny us real knowledge, real advanced technology, which is actually old, and real solutions to our global problems, whilst they all keep it a secret to protect the church program? Why the church program, you may say? Because at the very heart of the issue surrounding ETs and disclosure is the denial of information lies with the church and their off-world religious programs is why. This is the main reason it is kept a secret. Because the people will find out that the gods, the Lord, the disciples, angels and demons, etc. in the Bible and other scriptures were all these EBEs using us against our will, through ignorance, fear and a lack of knowledge denied to us. The think tank clowns ran an AI-based scenario of ET disclosure a couple of decades ago, and it forecasted that 2.3 billion would commit suicide with that knowledge. Why? Because ET disclosure brings an end to all the religions is why. The two go directly hand in hand. There is no division between them whatsoever. Religion was created to deny humans direct access to Source and have us all worship off-world entities as our new god or gods. The EBE told you that himself in his responses. All religions have their origin from the Hebrew Anunnaki script. All of them. You are not Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Islam, or Protestant, or any other derivative. Because if you follow religion, you are a disciple of the Torah and Talmud, both of which were written at the request of and for and by these off-world entities. Thoth and the Emerald Green Tablets was a Pleiadian Nibiru planet disciple and part of one of the 5 groups that made up the Anunnaki. 2 were humanoid, 1 reptile, 1 insect, and 1 avian group, which is the origin of Thoth. And then you have the Sirius star elements and their centenary zones, Dogons and the Black Cube, which is dotted all around the world, but its main centre of operations is the Mecca. The cornerstone of the Black Mecca Cube is a Sirius star-based energy harvesting stone for the off-world entities. And they get the Muslim people to spiral anti-clockwise around the stone because anti-clockwise is the main mode of energy harvesting, just like the former banking system. That spiraling creates an energy vortex that is then collected by the stone and the cube. And the problem is the vast majority on this planet have no idea just how precious that life force energy is. It is the most precious resource on this planet, and yet so many give it away so frivolously. None more so than in the act of praying. The act of praying is an energy harvesting practice. Look up and give your energy to your sky god or gods. But they actually tell you what they're doing to you in the pronunciation of the word. It is not pray, P-R-A-Y, but you are their prey, P-R-E-Y. Read the books again with an open, critical thinking and common sense mindset. It's riddled with more contradictions than a Drake show. Famine, pestilence, plagues, nuclear war, divide and conquer, deleting the common human language so people wouldn't coalesce. Incest, bestiality, multiple wives, denying the mother with their Father, Son and Holy Ghost mantra. Mary sleeping with a ghost, immaculate conceptions, trees going on fire and talking to you, talking snakes. God throwing his children away for eating an apple, and Jewish people rocking back and forth kissing a stone wall like some in-house mental patients, and people think this is normal. Alas, but I am just a conspiracy theorist, people will say. but at least I have my own mind and my own theory, and not blindly follow a script that looks increasingly ridiculous with each line you read. None of it makes any rational sense whatsoever, and I am genuinely sorry for all who took part or still do take part in that program. I really am. The extraterrestrial has just told you what it was, a fantasy, because we wouldn't accept the old truths. And you have all been duped on a massive scale. And deep down within you, you all know that, when the narrative has some real light shone upon it. The religious program is at the core of the full denial of ET disclosure. But when you find your real God again, source, you will know exactly why I have this opinion and stance. And a reminder of what the EBE told us in this transcript: you all bought into the religious fantasy. One of the things that jumped out of this exchange is the dropping off of the children, like some grocery delivery service. Whose children are they? What is their genetic mix? Are they all human or in part hybrid? And if so, which race is the hybrid and why? Now we know Eisenhower allowed them to abduct 2% of Americans, and it went much further than that. And by 1980, it was becoming a massive problem of the level of peoples who were being abducted, all of which was stopped after the signing of the peace treaty in 2016. But where are the records of those who were abducted kept? And at which point are they going to release those details? Don't the people who were abducted have the right to know? How many are actually aware that they were abducted to begin with? And if they argue it is psychologically damaging to tell the people they were abducted, then why wasn't that considered before this program was agreed to? Did these so-called people consider the long-term psychological effects on people who have had these experiences, only to be told you are hallucinating, swamp gas, or mentally ill? The psychological damage has already been done, and the people have a right to know if their names are on those lists. But the greater questions it raises, and connected to us all, is: how many here are really human? And how far does the hybrid genetics program go? Remember, I kept speaking of the 85-15 split and the potential of only 15% being organic humans. Are the humans here really only 15% in number? Is the real question many of you are or should be pondering on now. And it begs the question, does that 85-15 split I mentioned in 3 or 4 shows on the bounce now make more sense as to what was being revealed? When you consider they spoke about the cloned bot greys, a whole race created to be slaves permanently, is it so far removed to ponder they may have done that to many humans also? It is a valid question, and one that is increasingly in the affirmative as you watch the way people behave and act globally. It is hive mind acting and thinking, which is just like a programmed bot, is it not? Unable to think or speak beyond what school, the government, the church or the media have told them to say. And for evidence of that, look no further than religions again. Have you ever seen or heard a talking snake? An immaculate conception? A tree spontaneously going on fire and starting to talk to you? Oceans parting and then snapping back? And if God is everywhere, as the book tells you, why did he make Moses climb a mountain to hand him a tablet of orders? Wasn't God, was it? It was the EBEs running this planet. And why did God throw his so-called children, they weren't, and neither were the human, out of the Garden of Eden for eating a sodden apple for life? Does that make any sense whatsoever? And the media plays a large role in formulating people's opinions with their propaganda program, which is another hint or link to the off-world gods again, as the real term is pro-pagan dar, which means for pagan skin. And the media shenanigans has been run for at least 150 years, and heightened more since the age of computers, and worse again with the rise of smartphones. Their news makes no sense or appears from another world also, which is why I've labelled them the portal people. News from a completely different world, where they make headlines, 1,000 dead from the virus, and the populace goes, oh my God, that's terrible, we're all going to die. All those poor people. Me? I'm asking, where is your proof of 100,000 dead? And you get silence. And then you have programmed bots turn on you and call you a conspiracy theorist, when less than half of 1% know the origin or the meaning of the word. But all I'm asking is, where is the evidence? It's a fair and basic question to ask, but oblivious to so many people, as it's far easier to slander the conspiracy theorist than face the prospect that the media lies to them. There has been much written about UFOs and ETs on the internet, movies and TV shows, from groups like the Pleiadians. I always laugh when I hear that term. That star system spans thousands of light years and billions of planets, and all we hear is how they are coming to save us and then patronise us by writing blogs and saying, "Hello, dear ones." But according to the agreement, they were banned for contact. So all those that wrote the blogs prior to 2016, well, you make your own mind up. The Alcyon group were from the Pleiades, were guardians here in the past, and sold us out to the reptile group for technology. We heard for a while of biospheres all waiting to collect us by the Arcturians, only to find out they were food processing plants, to my knowledge. And we and many other species were their food. So our interactions, it has to be said, by and large, have been far from benevolent. And this is why all people need the knowledge surrounding this subject to be made available for future generations to get up to speed and not be at a massive disadvantage. The signing of the peace treaty ended many of the malevolent practices that EBEs and their agents on the planet perpetrated against us, and we can all be grateful for that. Yet how many have covered that news in the alternative media? Zero. Despite several groups claiming to be in contact with off-world species, do people not find that strange? There is no such one single group of positive ETs, period. And the same applies to humans as well. And then we come to something said about their planet's operations, of how they are run or governed, and they said this: the outcome of this process is that any form of political organising, including the politics of religious structure, becomes a personal moral transgression of higher shame to any who practice such pursuits than any good that could come from them. Straight out of the horse's mouth, so to speak. Moral transgression of higher shame to be involved in religion and political organising. And it's a lesson for us all, because governments and religious structures are purely there to control us. Both are a saviour programme. Both are required for people who won't take their own responsibility in life. They said their government was self-determination, which means they take their own responsibility. So why would he say that? It is because the EB group, who have developed sufficiently from being children and have become adults as a race. And sadly, this planet is largely made up of people with child-level thinking. And I know some don't like to hear that. and I hate to say it myself, but it's a fact. Look around you. Look no further than the behaviour of so-called adults on social media. Some are actually worse behaviourally than the children. And then we have millions of people walking around with masks, when the symptoms of the virus is in part respiratory, and you want to keep that in. That's what I mean of child level thinking. The parent, the government in this case, told them this is the way to do it. Just like the parents tell the children when they're young. As adults, we're supposed to question. As children, we just follow orders. This is what we can aspire to going forward. No government per se, just committees of people deciding what's best for and by the people in any given particular field. Many people complain about their governance and they are tyrannical. But when good people do nothing, is that not what you get from a government? Tyranny. And people will argue, no, they should do the right things. But no one is making them accountable. And government is now a complete harvesting system and a free-for-all, acting above the law, whilst the public sit there and by their silence are complying. This is what the EBE was telling you. Self-determination, self-governance. And being involved in government and religious fantasy is the highest shame ever. And the ideal goal is what the People's Club is trying to bring to you, where everyone participates, the people having a voice, caring and sharing society, need not greed, and a return to natural law, all done under a cooperative banner. This then teaches personal responsibility, providing for yourselves, becoming more self-sufficient and away from the slavery system of doing jobs you don't wish to do for pay that for the majority is insufficient. So the final question to end tonight's show is, were the ETs showing up here beneficial for us or not? In my opinion, the ETs landing here turned out to be not the best for we the people at all, and served only to produce a massive benefit to those who wished to break away from humanity. Yes, you, the SS small p, and provide a massive opportunity for Majestic 12 and their clown minions in agencies to sequester vast fortunes of the people's money for secrecy and their clandestine operations. This whole program has worked against us massively. And although some information has come out from various UFO groups, most of which was not the truth, as revealed in Part 1 and Part 2, because those groups were infiltrated by agency and Majestic minions to control and divert the truth from us all. The psychological damage of not revealing to us the truth is incalculable. But for those who ask what is the main reason now why the ET program is not publicly revealed to all, there is one giant problem blocking that disclosure, and it's called religion. All of them. The disclosure of "we're not alone" will reveal that the god or gods you've been praying to were all ETs with too large of an ego, and were playing God to then subvert and control us. I expect during my lifetime that horrible truth, many may not believe now, will come to be the full truth and reality. The announcement of that full truth will be a major step of the people of this planet of finally stepping away from the childlike fantasy and illusion into a developing adult race, which will eventually be capable and responsible enough to travel the stars ourselves. That will be a glorious day for humanity. Imagine crafts built by a People's Club company, and not self-serving control system based people and groups like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Branson and or Musk, or the negative ET and Black Sun based organisation called NASA, or the SS small p either, as they are even worse. The SSP is a breakaway civilization group mired in the Dark Forces narrative and ideals that gained and used the advanced technology at our expense by meetings like described in these two shows. NASA and the SS small p are one and the same, created by the Black Eagle, Black Sun group, more commonly known as the SS. That same SS was around way before World War II, known as OSS, which morphed into, after these craft crashed, to the CIA, who now controls the narrative. These SS are not German per se, and Hitler was not the Black Eagle group either, or part of the main SS. These are the psychopaths that are a part of the Hebrew Anunnaki group, masquerading as Jews. Masquerading as Jews. I hope you heard that clearly. They are not representative of the Jewish people, although their Bible has lured in many of their ilk into that program. These people are Zionists, and that is where the term Nazi came from, by taking the first two letters and combining them from a political front called National Zionism, N-A-Z-I. And it all stems from the Anunnaki. Yet again, though, it shows the propensity for humans to sell out by being seduced by riches, titles and technology. And it has hampered humanity's progress on a massive scale because of a few unwilling to share anything. We have an opportunity now to rebuild the world in our image. We can be the voice of the people. We can be the enforcement. And we can be something better with the People's Club. And I ask all who listen to come and join us. All donations are voluntary. We don't charge fees for anything. So go to thepeoplesclub.org and to think different, thepeoplesclub.org, to invest in humanity. We are our own saviours. Imagine a future where the People's Club becomes the dominant voice of the planet, all ran by the people, with no person in the lead role. It's all shared together. Do you think the ETs visiting from the future, in the future, will wish to come down and talk to governments, or a representative of a group of the voices of the people? The People's Club, once built, can provide that platform for the people acting in the right way to finally engage the peoples and beings from the stars. One can only dream currently, but it's up to us all to build that dream. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams, and I'm human. Bye for now.